There it is.
There we go. I think we've got it now.
So what happened was I accepted. We started talking, and then it popped up on my screen up top that it's like Coaster101 is now live, and I went just naturally clicked that, and it took me, and I was watching myself talk. It was very strange.
Oh, geez. So how are things? How's everything going?
Good. I am in Ohio. For all the nerds out there, I am maybe like a half hour from Kings Island, a half hour due north of Kings Island. So drove by it on my way up here the other day. But yeah, so was in Orlando and then moved up. Was moving to Atlanta, but with the virus stuff, our house got a little bit delayed getting built, and it's one of those things where it's like, why get temporary housing when we're working from home? Might as well just go work from our in-laws. So that's where we are in Ohio for the time being.
That's good. I mean, as long as you're able to work from home, no issue. It shouldn't be an issue. And
No.
I feel like it had to be a bummer for you driving by Kings Island on your way up and seeing it closed.
It was a huge bummer because up until like a couple weeks ago, the plan all along was that my wife was going to work up here for the first little bit before this whole virus started. And so I had this big plan. I was like a month ago, it dawned on me. I'm like, wait a minute. The wife is going to be in Dayton, Kings Island, the time Kings Island opens. I'm going to be able to go to opening day. And then that all went down the drain. So, I was, plus the day I drove by, it was like 80 degrees and sunny here in Ohio, which in March is rare. So I'm like, oh man, it would have been great to go over there. So.
Yeah, it happens, and we're obviously every regional park right now is hurting. I saw earlier today that Disney's starting to furlough people.
Yeah,
obviously, as theme park fans, we want this gone as much as everybody does, but it'll get there one of these days.
Yeah, that's the worst part about this thing is the timing. It's like, at least in Florida, we were riding rides all year, but for everyone else, I'm sure. I grew up in Detroit. I know what the off season's like. So I know, like, man, come like February, March, you just want to get out there. You just want to get to the parks. And then to be told, like, in some cases, like, Six Flags Over Georgia and stuff, or like Dolly would open for one day and then close. But for a lot of people, like, they're a day or two away from their season getting ready to start.
Right. So I guess, you and I, we kind of go way back on Twitter as people in 2020 do. We hadn't met in person for the first time until IAPA last year.
Yeah, IAPA party.
Oh my gosh, that was the great folks at Ride Entertainment. I don't think they're watching, but if we post this later, I'm going to say a nice thing about Ride Entertainment. They were nice enough to have us out for the relighting of the Sky Coaster at Fun Spot. KCL Engineering out of Iowa, who's a Ride Entertainment partner, it's under their umbrella.
Vendor or something, yeah.
Yeah, they put a new light package on the Sky Coaster, had a bunch of us out. It was a really good time, and it was a really good time to kind of, meet that theme park internet. Like, obviously, you're all over Twitter. We're all over Coaster101 doing whatever we do. But, guys like Taylor from Coaster Studios and Drew from In the Loop and all those guys, they're names you interact with on a daily basis almost. It seems like anyway. But, you meet them in person and they're actually, real people, decent people for the most part, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, well, and that's I feel like for me, it was always really great to meet a couple of like guys from like the UK, like the Theme Park Worldwide on YouTube guys, like because they're we almost met up at Carowinds last year, and we almost run into each other a few times. It's a lot easier for us now, especially since I'll be living somewhere in your neck of the woods on your side of the country ish.
There you go.
But yeah, it was cool to kind of get to see people. Some of the Coaster Force guys or European Coaster Crew, Coaster Club that, travel halfway around the world. And you get to see them at every little press event or media day or something like that. So
exactly, yeah. Some of those guys were great. I mean, I think of Marcus specifically from Coaster Force, and I think his podcast is the Drunk Riders podcast. And he couldn't have been more welcoming. He was just like, hey, we're here. Come hang out. Come ride this wacky worm with us, and we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like everyone, you know, that's the really cool thing is, you know, there's always a few bad apples that, you know, people are like, you know, it's a hobby is whatever. But then you go and you meet all these other people and, you know, all these people who have very successful YouTube channels or podcasts or whatever like that. And they're all just there to, they're just as goofy in person as you see it. Like, you're like, okay, when, you know, the drunk riders talk about this on their podcast, they must be making that up. Or, you know, when people are doing this on YouTube, they must be, that's a stunt. Nope, that's just their everyday life. You know?
It really is.
Yeah.
So your background, you graduated from University of Central Florida,
Yeah,
and you were president, I believe, is what I saw. Of
yeah,
the,
theme park
Leaders of America. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I actually started going to college in Ohio, and so living back here in Ohio is like full circle. But lived in Ohio for a few years, and then a couple of my friends started going to UCF for their hospitality program. And at that point, it was just kind of getting started. I think it started like really started taking off in the mid 2000s, and they're like, "Hey, you should come down here," and I'm like, "Nah, I got a good thing going on here." And then finally decided to move down. I moved down there to the Disney College program for 6 months. And, you know, I really got to, with my friends that were over at UCF, I was hanging out with them a lot and meeting their friends. And I'm like, man, like, you know, it was, you know, In the Loop was around back in the day. Then I used to say, like, this is like an In the Loop podcast in real form. You know, it was, we go to like the bar and like, just there'd be like 10 of us going, oh my God, did you see that park setting this ride? I was like, this is like my dream come true. I grew up in Detroit, sheltered from any theme parks, and you know, 10 of us just went to Universal, rode roller coasters, and now we're all talking about it. So they convinced me to stay in Florida, which wasn't hard. And yeah, I went to UCF, finished my schooling there, and joined the Future Theme Park Leaders. And then, yeah, eventually became president. So the club's still going strong. I was probably in like the fourth or fifth year of it, and it's kind of evolved a little bit. But it started as basically the story goes, you know, when the hospitality program started, there wasn't a lot of theme park stuff to it, and the program's really evolved to have theme park stuff. So when they started having some theme park classes and, you know, some coaster nerds started going there, they're like, hey, like, we should get together, you know, after class and, you know, talk coasters. And then they realized, well, crap, if we just, you know, fill out some paperwork, we can get this sanctioned and get like money from the school to pay for us to go to a theme park or something, you know? So just kind of out of that, it kind of grew from there. And in the early years, what the club was really kind of known for is it was really just a bunch of us. Like there'd be like we meet every Monday night or every other Monday night, and just all get in the room, just kind of talk about news and just, you know, kind of gossip about theme parks and stuff. And the kind of the highlight of the year was, again, this was like the guys who founded it kind of like, okay, if you are a student organization at UCF. You can apply for like a couple $1,000s worth of grant money and so they would take that money, and the 10 or so people would go out to California, and somehow they got really good connections with Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farms. I mean, we were treated like royalties. So every year, they still do this to this day. The club goes out to Disney, Disneyland, Knott's, Six Flags. Sometimes they work in SeaWorld, sometimes they work in Legoland and stuff like that. But every year they go out, and I mean, like when they go out, I went out twice, once as a member and once as the president leading it. And I mean, Disney rolled out the red carpet. They the one time they're like, we have a surprise lunch for you, and we're like, what? We all sit down until Marty Sklar comes out, and we have lunch with Marty Sklar.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, so it's like 10 of us sitting around this table with Marty Sklar. Like we had to have like an hour and a half lunch with Marty Sklar, and you know, we got to meet George Kalogridis, and you know, who's now like way up the ranks, and John Storbeck, who's now over at Knott's. But yeah, I mean, they treated us like kings, and literally we would spend 2 days there. and they would show us every little backstage thing, take us behind the scenes here. And the one year we went, they got us a tour of Imagineering in Glendale, and this was just after New Fantasyland was announced. And I don't know if you remember when New Fantasyland was announced for Magic Kingdom, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train wasn't part of it. And, there's a lot of rumors on like Screamscape, a coaster got cut, and now it's just character meet and greets. And then the rumors like, nope, a coaster's coming back. Well, we went into Imagineering, and they had a model that was probably the size of like a living room or something of New Fantasyland, and in the middle of this model there's this giant roller coaster of the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and we're all just looking at each other like, holy crap, this hasn't been announced yet. And because everything else in Imagineering is like, it wasn't, it was just more like they walked us like, here's this commemorative we didn't really get to see it, and this was like, oh my god, this is like, and then sure enough, like a month later they announced the ride, but that was kind of cool. So like the club really was a great way to kind of interact with people out there. And I know a lot of people who got jobs in management at like Six Flags Magic Mountain and then Asbury Farms and stuff coming out of that. And the club has evolved over time. Now, I mean, they're supposed to have Josh, the new president of Disney World, like 2 weeks ago, but obviously with everything going on, he can't. So they get these big guests now. Back in the day, we were happy if we could get like, an entry-level manager from like Universal to come in and talk to us.
Right.
Or I think at one point we were going to have like Paula Warney from Holiday World Skype in with us, but now they get into some big names. It's kind of evolved to be a little bit more themed entertainment.
Right.
Whereas when it originally started out just coaster nerds. I remember the first time I went to California, we were all like, all right, let's go to Asbury Farms, and we're just going like marathon the crap out of Accelerator. And then the next year we went, it was kind of like a fresh crop of people in the organization. They're like, oh, we should go to this museum. And we're like, half of us were like, no, we just want to go back to Magic Mountain and ride X2 like 10 more times. Like,
gosh.
But yeah, so I got my degree in theme parks there, and they expanded the program quite a bit. But I mean, it's an interesting place because one of the professors, he invented the Disney College program. So he talks about that. And that's the thing there. None of the professors are like great professors, but their like life experiences are like what makes it really cool.
Right.
There's one of the professors, I think he's still there, Ron Logan. He was a former like executive vice president of the Walt Disney Company, not just Walt Disney World or anything. So he talks about stories of how his office was 2 doors down from Eisner, and like, the hallway conversations he would have with Eisner, when Eisner would be like, hey, come to my office. I'm thinking about this. I want to do a new theme park, America themed. Am I crazy? So he was there for like the initial like brainstorm of that. That's what I think that's where really what gets your money's worth there, kind of thing, is like, right. You don't learn a lot. The classes are pretty easy, but it's the experience of like, oh man, like just hearing those stories, as a theme park fan, of like, oh man, this guy actually like was buddy with Eisner, and
right.
stuff like that.
So what was, that time frame? Like I graduated high school in 2008, and UCF specifically for that Rosen College of Hospitality was somewhere where I applied. What was the? You're not that much older than me, are you?
No, I graduated high school in 2005, so just a couple of years.
Okay,
but I didn't start there until 2008, and UCF is a pretty hard school to get into. What I did is, since I already had UCF, as long as you have a couple years under your belt, you can transfer in automatically, right. Pretty much. So that's what most people do. It's like, why pay the big dollars for your entry-level classes? So exactly. That's what I ended up doing.
Makes sense. And you spent some time at Disney World. You did the college program. What was your role in the college program? I was at Big Thunder Mountain Railway.
Operated. And then when I signed up for the college program, I interviewed, I just mentioned to the recruiter, and they're like, "Oh, any other questions?" During my interview, I said, "Yeah, one. Can I just like make a request?" And they're like, "Well, we can't guarantee a request." I was like, "I love roller coasters, and Big Thunder Mountain was like the first big roller coaster I ever rode. Can I work there?" And sure enough, they gave it to me.
Hey, it's always good.
Yeah, so I worked there worked at Big Thunder college program for like 6 months, and a couple months after that as well. But yeah, I mean, being college program, you usually end up closing. So I pretty much worked every closing shift, which is at Magic Kingdom, usually till 12, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, It was like, oh my gosh, the park closed at 9 o'clock today. What are we going to do? We got off so early. So like for me, it being like a coaster runner, that was super cool because that meant the closing person, every night I got to walk the track of the ride. And there would be 2 of us, and one person would go out the brake run, one person would go out towards the lift. You meet halfway through, but I mean, that's like a half-mile long ride. So you're walking a quarter mile up and down the hills.
Mm-hmm.
It was a workout, but like, I just remember so many times it'd be like 10 o'clock at night, the park is completely quiet, or 11, 12 o'clock at night, and here I am like just walking along the track next to like the little like drunk scene of like the flooded houses of mine or whatever, and I'm like, this is amazing, man. What am I getting paid? This is like coaster nerd come true. Unfortunately, it was before iPhones or anything like that, so
Right.
I think I took like one photo on my my old school cell phone, but I'm like, man, if I had an iPhone back then, I would have been taking so many good photos.
That's all good. And then you spent a couple of years with the Walt Disney Company after your CP, correct?
Yeah. So then I wanted to be. I kind of got burnt out on ride operations. Like working for a while. The Magic Kingdom hours are just gonna be so long. There was like a month straight where I literally worked 6 days a week, 8 a.m. to midnight every day. It's like I didn't even have time to like do laundry because you get off at midnight. Magic Kingdom, it takes you a half hour to get to your car because you have to take a shuttle bus back to it, and then I have to be back a couple hours later. So that just burnt me out, and it's just so damn hot in the summer too. So I applied to go work at the hotels. Worked at concierge for like a year at the boardwalk, and then had the chance to become their internship for management. I got that and did management for a year at Downtown Disney as custodial, and then 3 years in hotel management.
Was your time in management at the boardwalk as well, or was it? Did you bounce around?
I was management at Disney's Downtown Disney back then, and I was all management at hotels was at Saratoga Springs and Old Key West.
Okay,
so timeshare. But what I will say, just some optimism in with today's world. Not that really bad time to kind of be saying this because the news just came out a little bit ago that Disney is furloughing a bunch of the employees and whatnot, but if you're a college student, don't let this, get you too upset. It could be really good for you because when after I did my college program, and then I got full time doing concierge, I kept applying for the management internship, kept applying for it, and never got it. And then this was like 08, 09, so right when the recession started to hit. And they actually went through and did a big layoff of managers. Like almost every area had like 7 to 10 managers, and they probably cut it to 5. And then they cut the interns, and they just started to accept applications for this was in like February. They just started accepting applications for the management program that began in June. And they cut that, and I was like, oh, well, I've been applying 3 or 4 years now, time to give up. And I actually got an internship at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I was actually going to be the team lead on Dark Castle, which would have been kind of cool.
Absolutely.
Except that they were going to put me up in some converted like Days Inn that they turned into apartments where it's like 6 bunk beds to a room with international students. I'm like, oh man, that would have sucked. But then at the last, so they cut all this stuff, all these massive layoffs in like February, cut the program, and then like. As most companies realize, like a month or two later, they're like, crap, we cut too much. So they brought back the internship program. But at this point, it was like mid-April, late April, and most people, colleges were getting ready to wrap up for the year. They only posted it for like 3 days. And I got it. And I think the only reason I got it, so I had to turn down Busch Gardens. I think everyone in that semester who got the program were local to Orlando, because I think at that point everyone else already had plans for the summer. I mean, I technically did. So I think I finally just lucked out because of that. So I would say, if you're like, oh man, I really wish Disney didn't cancel their internships right now, or Universal or SeaWorld or whatever. In a way, it could work out well for you if you're looking for like a fall internship, and the fact that they might have, especially like SeaWorld, they just laid everyone off. They're going to need to hire back people fast. So it could actually work out. I like to think, like I said, I applied for like 2 or 3 years in a row, over and over every semester, never got it. And then it's like this one time, because I think they're trying to hire people real fast, I was able to get it. So
nice. So kind of what's your history with the industry? I mean, you've been a fan for a while, long time.
Yeah.
How'd you develop that fandom?
Oh man, so I've been a fan ever since I was like super small. So growing up in Detroit, going to Cedar Point is kind of like the thing. Like everyone in the Detroit area goes to Cedar Point like one time during the summer. Like that is the thing. And my family's been going to Cedar Point since my mom was little. My grandparents were like, my grandparents talk about going to Cedar Point back in like the 40s and 50s. My parents, the decades after that. So it's like this family thing that like every year family go. And so I started going when I was like 1 or 2 years old, and I remember like going when I was like 3 or 4 or 5, and just being like mesmerized by like this whole thing, and being like, wow, what's this? I wouldn't ride anything, but mesmerized by it. And I think it just kind of grew from there. Back then there was no internet, and I remember as I got a little bit older, we'd go to the library, and my mom would be like, okay, look up books. I'd be like, roller coasters. We just got back from like Cedar Point or something, and that's where I started, reading some of these books on it. And there's this place called Six Flags, and I think it just slowly started to develop from there. And then there was an exhibit at the local science center about theme parks, and my parents took me there. Like, oh, you probably like this. And there was a model from Michael Graham from Gravity Group back before he was even with CCI. There, this huge model, and they had all this stuff about Ace. And they had all these books for sale that I never saw before, all these magazines. And that's where like that was probably like mid 90s, maybe like 97, 98. And that's where it was just like, oh crap, there's a world behind. I really like Cedar Point, but there's a world beyond Cedar Point, and that's when like, the Discovery Channel specials started coming out. And I think just from there, it really started to grow. And I think especially kind of, I remember when Cedar Point announced Mantis, and like following along the constructions for Mantis, and that was kind of neat, and Power Tower. And I think, but when it really kind of grew into this, like, oh man, there's this whole world out beyond Cedar Point, was that like 99, 2000, when it's like, holy crap, every park, is adding a major ride. You got California Adventures getting ready to open, then you have Seven Beasts, Millennium Force, and all that stuff. So I think that's where it really kind of kicked into gear, and I started to get on message boards and stuff like that. And it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. I got, and I just really, throughout the whole time in college, really liked it. That's why I wanted to go into it. And then just, kind of coming out of it, kind of taking it up to a little bit where it is today. After I worked at Disney for a few years, I had the opportunity to go work at Hilton, and I decided to kind of step away from the industry, but I still wanted to stay really involved in it. So I still was very active in IAPA, like Young Professionals, and just, following along with it on the internet, listening to podcasts and stuff. And I just, kept, staying super interested. And I think kind of going up to where it is today, I just have always been kind of fascinated on the business side of it. I have like a business degree, so I've always kind of like the business angle of things.
Right.
So, and the marketing, that's my day job for the last 6 or 7 years after leaving Disney, is marketing. So I think that's where I just kind of found like, okay, and I can't talk to anyone else about this, so I might as well just blurt it out on Twitter, like, "Oh man, I think this is a good business decision," and and I think there hasn't been a lot of coverage on that kind of stuff on the internet. I think there's a lot of fan content, which is great, and then a lot of the not to dog on like some of the industry publications, but even like IAPA, I think they're great, but it's very it does have kind of blinders on, of like everything's rosy and great, and like I'm not afraid to be like, well, this company's doing this boneheaded move, and I think that's kind of what I like to do. So
Yeah. Speaking of industry publications, it looks like Josh Liebman just joined. So, hi, Josh. How's it going?
Josh, what's up, buddy?
So, being from Detroit, and I have no knowledge of Michigan geography. Did you ever get over to Michigan's adventure at all?
This is that's all the geography you need to know. Poor Upper Peninsula up there. Yeah, I got over to Michigan Adventures. Actually, I've only been there 3 times, and one of them was for Josh's wedding last year. Went there, barely made it back in time for his wedding. Yeah, it was weird. Grew up in Michigan and unfortunately never made it to Boblo Island, which was a theme park right there on the water in between Detroit and Canada. Never made it there. And even though Cedar Point is about the same distance from my parents' house as Michigan Adventures, we only went there like once as a family, and then I went once a couple years ago, and then once last year. So,
Gotcha.
But man, Shivering Timbers, so good.
I was going to say, does that? We've got a guy on our team, Larry, who is he worked at Michigan's Adventure for a while, and
Yeah.
the only thing I hear about that park, good or bad, is Shivering Timbers is really good. So
Yeah.
it lives up to the hype.
Oh, it's really, 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 really good. I think if you put trees around it, I think people would like it as much as the Voyage to some extent. I think it is, since it is just kind of a parking lot coaster, but in a way that makes it look cool. It looks so damn tall and so crazy. But yeah, there's literally nothing else there. But I will say that side of the state is incredibly beautiful. Like there's going up towards Traverse City, there's sand dunes, and that side of Michigan is just incredibly nice. So you can make kind of a non-theme park trip out of it, going out that way too. But yeah, Shivering Timbers is one of those rides that like it's a pain in the ass to get to, but you just gotta go at some point, So
That's the it's part of the journey, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
kind of on that same subject though. What's a coaster that you've gone way out of your way to ride?
Oh, I mean, I think easily that would be Mindbender and Edmonton, Alberta, inside the mall up there, the Schwarzkopf, and I mean that's I went in February. It was like -15 degrees in Canada. Just way up in the Rocky Mountains of Canada. In February to ride that damn Schwarzkopf, because it's just there's 2 or 3 other coasters at that indoor park, but man, that was quite I think it was a 7-hour flight in total from Orlando. I think like 4 hours to Minneapolis and 3 hours from Minneapolis. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't have a story that quite cool. But a couple years ago I was in at my grandmother's in the eastern part of North Carolina. And out way east in North Carolina, there's this little like hole in the wall steakhouse. It's called Deadwood. Yeah. And believe it or not, they have a roller coaster there.
Oh man, I love steak and I love coasters. You got me here.
I didn't eat the steak, but it is a if you're the coaster credit counting, and I was like at that point I was down to like 3 roller coasters in North Carolina that I have not ridden. And this was one of them, but it's a little tiny kiddie coaster, and I drove an hour and 15 minutes out of my way past my grandmother's house. It was not worth the drive at all, but yeah. I got it, and it was Dinosaur Canyon was what it was called, and they had like this one
Does it still exist?
Oh, it still exists. This was like 2 years ago.
Oh man!
If you ever find yourself,
where is it? Where?
It's at Deadwood. Williamston, North Carolina. is
What?
where Deadwood is.
West or east?
East.
Okay.
So like complete opposite side of the state from Carowinds, and
Yeah. Okay.
so
Josh has reminded me to tell the story about Josh's magical land of beer and steak. We were leaving Silver Dollar City after like driving all day, and we're just like, he's like, where should we go to dinner? Where should we go to dinner? He's like, we want to go here. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you wanted to go to Josh's magical land of beer and steak? Like it looked like a rundown place, and we went to this little steakhouse in Branson, Missouri, and not only was it good, but the waitress told us she was homeless, and she lived in her car, and they sold cassette tapes of local country singers in the gift shop. And no, this wasn't that long ago. This was like 2010. So cassette tapes were long dead by then, but they still sold cassette tapes. It was good. It still exists. It's right by the Titanic Museum.
Nice. So somebody in the there's a couple people in the chat asked a question. Dankosaurus, fantastic name. They want to know if Shivering Timbers is worth the drive. And then I'm going to do some research here also from Dankosaurus wanting to know if Williamson is close to Virginia. So you talk Shivering Timbers, I'm going to look at Google Maps real quick.
I mean, I think you can make it worth the drive. I think I think it's probably 3.5, 4 hours from Cedar Point, so it's not super far away. And I mean, I was going to say Indiana Beach. Indiana Beach is probably the closest thing to it, so that ever reopens. But I will say, actually, this is how you can get around it. The spinning loop-de-loop thing from IAPA, that coaster is actually opening like a half hour from Michigan Adventures. So now you can go to Michigan Adventures. The FEC has a SBF Visa. They will now have this SBF hamster wheel. So you have 5 coasters, more than 5. Michigan Adventures has like 5 or 6, and then you have those 2 right there as well. But I think from Chicago, it's maybe like a 4-hour drive. So like I said, try to maybe do a little Michigan stuff while you're out that way. Going to the west side of the state on the beaches right over there is really nice. So you can make it work it.
The one at IAPA, that was
that was something else. It was awful in the best way. Like
it was. You get that hamster wheel and you take those turns upside down, and it's just like, I don't want to be doing this, but I'm here, so I should probably be doing this because it's on everyone else's Instagram.
Yeah, and you're like, I gotta get for the content, and I gotta get the credit, and it's one of those things that they'll make tons of money off of because everyone will if you walk into you're an average person walking into a park, you're like, I gotta ride that looks so cool, and then for a park like that where it's pay one price per ride, as long as they get you your money for the ride, they don't care how shitty it is. So
oh yeah, I got lucky that I got there. I think it was Thursday, and that was the first thing I went to. I made a beeline for it because I wasn't waiting in that line.
Yeah,
and there was a guy who was also media. I forget his name right now. He was a young kid, but he had a GoPro on his chest, and he was sitting directly across from me. I was like, "Hey, do you mind sharing that with me, and we'll put it on our YouTube and whatever?" But he was just like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." I could find that guy again and thank him again. But it was, I tell you what, it was not. I wouldn't want to ride it again.
No.
You do it one time and it's fine. And to answer the earlier question, Williamson is like 50 miles south of the North Carolina-Virginia border. I don't know. That's as the crow flies. I don't know the easiest way, but it is in the literal middle of nowhere. And then you go 10 miles past that, and that's where Williamston is. And it is just, again, there's steakhouse, there's miniature golf, and then there's this little 8-foot tall roller coaster that's operated by a guy with like 3 teeth.
There you go. That's all you need. I mean, I don't know how he enjoys the steak then if he only has 3 teeth. You know,
he'll gum it down with some potatoes, and it'll just. So what are some of your other favorites in the industry right now? I know you've probably ridden a ton of coasters. You got let's say a top 3. Let's
rub some people the wrong way here. Millennium Force is probably my number 1. Okay. And I mean, part of that I will own up to. That's that's just from the fact. I mean, Steel Vengeance technically is the better ride, for sure. But I think Millennium Force is just one. Like I was saying, that's kind of when I really like my love for the industry like shot up, and being a Cedar Point fanboy, it's hard to not like that. And that ride is still just so epic. I was talking with the guys on Your Favorite Coaster Sucks podcast like a week or two about it, and we were all kind of agreeing, like, Steel Vengeance, super hyped up about that. There was a lot of media hype and, enthusiast hype about it, and there's been other rides like Iron Gwazi and Fury that have hyped, but like there's just been nothing to the extreme of like Millennium Force. Like they used to, used to go to the movies in the spring of 2000. And in the Detroit area, one of the trailers you would see would be for Millennium Force. It was just epic thing. And I mean, it still looks so damn big. So I think that's, just probably like my overall top sentimental reason. Plus, it's a great ride. And then I would say Steel Vengeance and like Voyage are like that 2 and 3 spot. Kind of throw it out there. Voyage, I've finally got a night ride on that like a year or so ago. That was really cool. But I really like that, and then obviously Steel Vengeance is fantastic.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, I've ridden Millennium Force one time. I've not ridden Steel Vengeance. I was at Coaster Mania a couple years ago and was like that close from fitting in the train. So that was that was a bummer. Waiting in line during the ERT where there's no line, and getting almost a front row ride and saying nope, not gonna fit. Sorry.
Yeah.
So bummer there, but I can second the Voyage. The Voyage is probably one of my top 2 or 3 wooden coasters. That's a list that just it varies from time to time. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in at that any given time.
Well, it also depends on too, like how well they're running. Like there's been years where I've only ridden the Voyage a few times, but like there's been other rides like where it's like there's like Thunderhead at Dollywood. I think is a good example where there's. The first time I rode that, like I was blown away. It was so good. And then I went back a couple years later. It was a piece of trash. And then they retrack it, and it's back to being really good. So it's like, pun intended, but they can go up and down on your list just like a like a roller coaster. So
pun intended. I love that.
Yeah.
Before obviously the world got in the situation that it was, do you have any big trips planned this year?
Yeah, I was going to go to Hawaii for my brother's wedding. Not coaster related, but going to go to Hawaii for my brother's wedding in early June. We're still kind of teetering about that. But Legend and I from In the Loop, we've been throwing around ideas for a European coaster trip in August, I think. And if anything, as long as this virus moves along as it's supposed to, it should become even cheaper. Like airfare is so cheap to go over there right now, and we really want to. He did like a 3-week expedition through Europe last year, and I haven't been to like theme park stuff in Europe in probably like 8 or 9 years. So a lot to see. I think the trip would be really based around going to Energylandia. I think everyone's trying to go out there this year, but going to Energylandia, riding the 5 million coasters they had there. I want to try to get down to Vina Prater. I went there during the winter. There's only a couple things open, but really want to try to get there. And then just really like, if we're over there for like a week, and I mean, that's the thing with Europe is there's so much gray stuff, so condensed. We're like, it'll probably come down to wherever we can find the cheapest airfare. So we're like, man, if we could find a cheap airfare that takes us to Barcelona, then we'll do Port Aventura, we'll do, the parks in Madrid, I forget what they're called, and then, fly over to Energylandia. If we find a really cheap trip to Amsterdam, I've never been to Efteling, he'd go back, we'd go do those parks. Or if we find a really cheap flight to Paris, we'll do stuff in Paris. So, I think besides Energylandia, we just kind of want to go over there, and there's just so much good stuff over there.
Yeah, I've yet to make it to Europe. It's on the to-do list. One of these days I will get over there. I promise.
That's the good thing is like, if you want to talk about the pros of this virus, there's very, very few. But the good thing is travel is going to be so cheap later this summer. and probably even into next year. It's like I just got an email from Frontier today. Like it's like $11 fares for the rest of the month. Now, granted, you're not traveling for theme parks right now, but if
Right.
you're once things reopen, it's safe to do so, and parks are getting back going again. If you jump on that right away, you'll probably get some stupid cheap airfare. But even I bet you'll be able to find stuff from most of the East Coast cities to Europe probably for $200-300 for through the fall.
Yeah.
And then even Asia, you'll probably be able. I'm seeing stuff from Orlando to China. This was before the virus, but even for like next year now for like $350. So
Wow.
I think if you ever wanted to go international, save up some dollars right now because man, I think once this thing passes, there's going to be some and parks too. I mean, they're going to have to make up for all their lost attendance, so they're going to probably be giving away tickets and packages, and you're probably never going to be able to find a cheaper rate at Walt Disney World as you will be able to find this June or July.
I hope so. So